when people look at you and they don't see you, they look past you.
It's about believing that something should be different and having the courage to live in that transition zone.
We contain multitudes.
Why did I feel so awful so much of the time?
It is a place that is so steeped in like white patriarchy, and yet I never felt more myself and more among Black people.
The women's rooms, they were basically men's rooms, and the urinals were still in there.
I feel like I spent so much time trying to educate the Amherst College community that I didn't get enough time to just be a student.
This is Black Women of Amherst College, a storytelling project exploring the experiences and impact of Black women in elite higher education. I'm Nichelle Carr, Amherst College class of 1998. So far in our series, we've learned that Black women have played a significant but often unrecognized role in shaping the agenda and the identity of the college. In this episode and the next, we're going to focus on the student experience. When we began working on this series, we invited alums to call in and leave messages about their experiences as students at the college. So to start us off, I want to play for you a voicemail we received from Sarah Bass of the class of 2006.
My name is Sarah Bass, and I graduated from Amherst College in 2006 with a double major in English Literature and Black Studies. 3 of the 6 girls in my family attended Amherst College, so yes, I would recommend it to a young Black woman applying today, but I would add a caveat. Do not go to Amherst College looking for it to tell you who you are, who you should be, what you're worth, and what you're capable of. You will set yourself up for heartache, even trauma. This would be the same for any institution. For Amherst to serve you, you have to already know who you are when you look in the mirror. This is not to say that you shouldn't be malleable, or your thinking porous, able to change and capable of growth, because you should be, but you shouldn't be blank. You need to know your story, because then your education becomes a journey, not of pleasing others, but of finding your voice. Amherst then becomes a stepping stone, not the destination.
So I've been thinking a lot about Sarah's message. She really captures the complex and sometimes competing aspects of the college experience while raising a central question. To be a Black woman in a white institution, you need a strong sense of self-knowledge because you'll be challenged on multiple fronts and in unexpected ways. At the same time, college is fundamentally an experience of self-discovery. For everyone, it is about a transition into adulthood. For this project, we talked with dozens of Black alumni, and this tension between knowing who you are and discovering yourself is something that I heard over and over again. To explore this and help me make sense of the range of experiences I heard about, I invited my friend Tanae to be a guest host for these next 2 episodes.
Hey. Nichelle! Hey, boo!
How are you?
I'm so good. I'm Tanae Adero Howard, Amherst College class of 2001.
When Tanae and I were students, we started an organization called Diversity Educators of Amherst. This organization later became the Amherst College Diversity Coalition. In other words, the 2 of us have been thinking about these issues and working to improve the Black student experience at Amherst for a very long time. You are absolutely the perfect person to help me process all the work that I've been doing in terms of just talking to these Black women of Amherst College. You know, I've interviewed over 40 alumni, and it's been really amazing. And so I'm hoping that you can help me kind of like process a lot of the themes that have come out.
Yeah.
So I want to play for you some of the conversations with the women I've talked to. And the first is Dr. Yolanda Faison Oyobanji. She's a family nurse practitioner with master's and doctoral degrees from Troy University. And she's one of nearly 100 Black women graduates who have gone into medicine and healthcare.
I am Dr. Yolanda Faison Oyobanji. I am class of 1992. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. The way I found out I got into Amherst, one of the deans called me. You know, she started talking about all what Amherst offered and what the scholarship would entail. All this time, I'm wondering, why is this woman telling me all of this? So, you know, she went through all of this stuff, and it would have been a full academic scholarship. And then she stopped talking, and I said, okay, does this mean that I was accepted? And she said, yes, absolutely. We've been trying to get in touch with you for weeks. I told her, I said, hold on for just a minute. And I put the phone down and I went running through my house screaming because I didn't have a clue. So that was it for me. Once she told me about the offer, I mean, it was a done deal. I was like, okay, that's a full scholarship. I don't have to worry about how I'm gonna pay for college. And so that's largely what impacted my decision. I mean, who knew? I didn't know it was like one of the top schools in the country that comes in one or two most times. I didn't know any of that. So I am one of those individuals that participated in the summer program prior to starting my freshman year. So that's when I saw the campus. And interestingly enough, my year, this was what, 88? Yeah, it was 1988, fall of 88. It really caused a lot of controversy on campus because all those people that participated in the summer program, we knew each other. And so, typical of freshman year, you're meeting all kinds of people, but some of us already knew each other. And it raised questions for others to say, well, how do these people know each other? Why did this happen? But it really was an opportunity for me to really know what being in an environment like that would be. They didn't have to do this. They didn't have to host us. They didn't have to bring us to the campus to make sure we would have an easier transition. I felt welcomed. The people that I was most rejected by were Black women, unfortunately. I didn't show up light skinned and perky, that's not how I presented. I presented, dark skinned Black woman coming from Newark, New Jersey, with all this energy I show up with, very outspoken. I mean, imagine I show up for freshman year, when the entire campus is assembling, and I got my hair braided up in a crown with gold pieces adorning it. So, it was I'm here, But what came along with that maybe was ghetto, maybe. I was being my cultural self. I think I was considered militant. I'm coming here to do the thing, what we doing. That was me.
Can I just say, what I love about her is that, yes, she is a PhD. She's a doctor. She also works as a nurse. And she is just blackety black and unapologetically so, and has been. Like she said before, it was cool when it probably cost her some things,
She showed up with her hair braided in a crown. I mean, listen.
Right. Let it be known a queen is in your presence.
This is it. Showed up with her hair braided in a crown, not knowing if Western Massachusetts had hair braiders. I mean, that is a kind of bravery and a kind of commitment to self that is next level.
You know what? I showed up with locks before locks were a thing and were cool. Western Massachusetts wasn't ready. I had to take the bus 4 hours to New York City to get my locks twisted. So true. And I think another thing, I definitely want to talk about the colorism, right? The idea that, her being a dark-skinned Black woman, even other Black women were looking sideways at her, That's something we still deal with today.
When whiteness is centered, then it's your proximity to whiteness that affords you kind of a different level of privilege and power and access. I can imagine for Dr. Yolanda, without the perhaps cultural capital of having gone to a predominantly white institution or having, or knowing what Amherst was and all of those things, right? Her proximity to whiteness was probably as far as anyone could be, right?
she did not code shift, it sounds like, right? You know, you and I both went to predominantly white high schools before going to college. So code shifting is like second nature. Like we know how to do that. We know how to kind of play the part when we're in the classroom, play the part when we're in a space like that.
That was often a calculation that one needed to make as a Black woman in a space like Amherst. The cost benefit analysis is, you know, what is it going to cost me in this situation to show up as my authentic self, right? And so what I heard Dr. Yolanda saying is that, like, for her, the cost was too great to show up as something other than herself. Like, I was kind of militant. I was kind of like, here I am and deal with it. Like, what we about to do? Let's do it.
And I also think this trade-off is about visibility versus invisibility, right? Like she could have played the game and code shifted in an effort to be visible, but would she have felt internally invisible because she wasn't being her true self? And then by being her true self and coming as she is, was she not also rendered somewhat invisible because people were not accepting of that, you know, both Black and white at Amherst?
I feel for the experience of not having other Black women who are holding space for you, because that was essential to getting through Amherst. As invisible as I felt in white spaces across many parts of my life, I am so thankful for the relationships that I have with my Black women friends. And we rolled real deep, Black girls in the class of 2001.
And when you talk about the crew that you rolled with, that makes me think of Billy Smith Toussaint.
Oh, that's my boo, Billy.
So she's your class of 2001. Billy teaches at a college preparatory school as one of the many Amherst Black alumni who've gone into K through 12 education. And she's another woman who I got to talk to who had an extraordinary story to tell me.
I'm from Ohio. I'm from like the middle of nowhere, small town Ohio. Like right now, it is one of the meth capitals of the area. It's very post-industrial. And so unlike a lot of like other Amherst folks of color, like I grew up poor. You know, my mom was pretty much like, good luck, kid. And so I went on the Greyhound bus and I went with my stuff in like black plastic bags. And I remember before I got to Amherst, we had to fill out this questionnaire in order to figure out who our roommate was going to be. And the questionnaire was exhaustive. I remember it was pages and pages and pages, right? And it was clear when I got there that they were trying their best to make sure that all of the room groups, at that point, like everyone was in room groups of 3, that they were the most diverse possible. And I was such an outlier that there was another Black girl in my room. Okay, because we were so different and I was so country and I had never been around privilege before. I was in the top 5% of a very mediocre school. You know, there was only one school for the whole town, and I thought I was something. I thought I was smart until I got to Amherst. And then when I started going to classes, there was this whole element of, I think, like academic, I don't know what the best word for it is. I don't know if it's violence. There was something really condescending and critical in the way in which other people, especially young white men, spoke to each other and engaged academically that made me clam up. Because it was just really clear to me that I didn't have the tools to kind of banter at that level. I was just telling my students the other day that the word, when I first got to Amherst, was hegemony. I had no clue what hegemony was. And I couldn't Google it underneath the table because cell phones weren't big yet. I was also too embarrassed to ask anybody what hegemony was, you know? Why did I feel so awful so much of the time? And why did I hate the school so much of the time when the school wasn't reinforcing white power and privilege beyond the very thing that it was? You know, that even being around that felt like an assault. never forget this as long as I live. I had just moved off campus. And I don't know how, but Dean Moss found out where I lived. I moved to North Amherst, right? Barely in Amherst anymore. And she had gotten into a car accident and her hips and knees were really bad. And we had no furniture, okay? And I remember like seeing her come through the door and like my stomach dropped. And I remember seeing her painfully get on the floor. And I was like, uh-oh, if Dean Moss has to center and ground herself, I need to get ready, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm thinking that my grandfather passed. That happens, grandparents pass away. And she said, your mother's passed away. And I remember the first thing I thought of was like, oh, okay, I worked over the summer. I got money in the bank. I can get home. And she was like, don't worry about it, baby. Amherst has got it. We'll pay for you to get home. And so, and that night, all of my friends got together, Nichelle, and they took me out to eat Asian food in Northampton. And they stayed up and sat with me all night. And it was like awake. And Nichelle, I must have been like in shock because I just remember laughing. I remember everything was so funny. And we just all stayed up and told stories and we were silly and we laughed. And they sat with me, Nichelle, and just like held space and sat with me.
I remember very clearly when Billy's mom died. I think that was one of the first times that I felt like loss, the proximity of loss. Like I had never like lost anyone. When we found out that her mom passed, it was just so confusing and it was really hard. And I think we all struggled to figure out how to show up for her because we had never experienced anything like that.
You know, Billy also talks about this idea of feeling awful and feeling like she can't find the right word for it, but she uses the term violence, the condescension in the ways that white men spoke to each other.
It was recognizable to me because I came from a predominantly white institution. And I'll tell you what, one of the things that I really appreciated and sought out when I was applying to college, and one of the reasons I really wanted to come to Amherst was because of the ability to choose what classes I was in. And part of how I managed some of that was I was really particular about the spaces that I was in. I, as like social as I am in a lot of ways, I really kept a really close circle in a lot of ways at Amherst and really tried as much as possible to be in spaces that were affirming of me. And class was often not those spaces. So I think like, I don't know that I was the number one dropper of classes, but I might have been number two. And I would be in a class for 2 weeks or like a week and a half. I'd be like, this ain't gonna work. This ain't gonna work. First of all, it's at 8 a.m. and ain't nobody trying to get up. Like, nobody. Least of all, Tanae Howard.
One of the things for me is that I felt like I was seeing a whole bunch more Black people when I got to Amherst, you know? And this one woman who I talked to felt the same way. She was like us, had gone to predominantly white institutions for me my whole life and for her whole life as well. And so when she got to Amherst, she thought she would like hit the pay dirt and seeing a bunch of Black people around her. And that is Laura Jarrett from the class of 2007. She's Valerie Jarrett's daughter. Valerie, of course, was a senior advisor to President Obama. So it's funny, almost Amherst coming full circle, right? So Amherst, back in the day, in the Gilded Age, catered to the children of the most powerful families in the country. And here we have Laura Jarrett, who is also a child from one of the most powerful families in the country. And she's also a Black woman. Laura is currently an anchor on CNN.
I'm Laura Jarrett, class of 2007. So I grew up in Chicago, Illinois, born and raised, lived there my entire life on the south side of Chicago with my mom. So when I lived in James, There were roaches, there were mice. I remember calling my mom up like, like there are a lot of roaches here. Like, do you have any suggestions? And she was like, girl, get some boric acid and like pour it in the corners. And I was like, all right. But at the time, it's college, you just sort of deal with things and roll with it. I distinctly remember not wanting to be in a single sex dorm. I remember that was like an option to choose. And I was like, no, I want co-ed. And like, that was my first time sharing a bathroom with a boy, right? Like, it's sort of weird. Again, like, I'm an only child, single mom. So the idea of like taking a shower and then like a boy is in the stall next to me, that was sort of bizarre. Even in the middle of nowhere, there are like a whole lot of Black people. And that was just such a different experience for me coming from a predominantly white school. And now I'm in this environment and there are a whole lot of Black people from a whole bunch of different places. It wasn't just like there's one other person in the room. You don't have just one to pick from. And that was so different for me. That's what's so ironic about it though, right? Like it is a place that is so steeped in like white patriarchy. And yet I never felt more myself and more among Black people than I did in that environment, right? Like, I don't think I've ever had an environment where I felt more not like the minority than I was at Amherst. I was definitely a member of the BSU. I do not remember doing anything other than going to parties. The first time I read anything about critical race theory was at Amherst. It was not at Harvard. And first time I had read anything about Catherine McKinnon and feminism, that was at Amherst. It wasn't at Harvard. And so I think I credit Amherst enormously for framing how I looked at issues of racial justice, sexism, all of the things that I care about deeply and the things that I end up covering on CNN every day. There's not a whole lot of us on TV, and we're making progress, and there's more than there used to be. And there are a ton of correspondents and reporters, but in terms of the anchor ranks, it's still pretty bare. And so I think about it a lot, and I think about it again in terms of an enormous responsibility to get this right. I think about that intersectionality all the time. I think about that every time I read a script, and I think like, that word's not right.
So what I love about Laura is just the unbridled joy at being within the Black community, right? She is one of those people, we've all seen Laura Jarrett because she's on TV. So she's one of those people who kind of fits the mold of what we talk about when we talk about proximity and adjacency and, Eurocentric features. Like, she's very fair-skinned and very attractive, comes from these predominantly white institutions, so absolutely knows how to speak their language. But she was very, very happy and content with the Black community and with steeping herself in that Black community. Because what she's saying is, I'm not showing up in the way that you expect, or maybe that you want, or what you might judge to be best and most advantageous. I am showing up in the way that I want to, and I'm going to do this my own way and still succeed.
I think that is a little bit of a Black girl superpower, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that once we are able to and have the community and support around us to show up as our authentic selves, like, what you gonna do? Who gonna check me, boo? Like, that's what, like, it's to a certain extent, it goes back to Sonia Sanchez as well. Just like, that is the legacy of Black women in this space. And, in all/many spaces. But is that like that forging of the path, right? And she even talks about it at, the legacy, the lineage of forging the path and bringing that forward to CNN, right? And to the world of news and journalism, right? And so that it feels like almost something that is, it's laid down in our souls before, right? And then activated. I do think that there's something, at least for me, about that space of Amherst that activated that sense of like, who gonna check me, boo? I'm out here getting an Amherst College degree and like working it out.
It goes without saying that she brings her whole self to work at CNN. Like she just told us, she's bringing the critical race theory, she's bringing the feminism, she's bringing all of that with her. That is what CNN and the world is getting. Thank you very much, Ms. Laura Jarrett. In these 3 stories, we have heard about colorism, class, and cultural differences, all within the Black community. And I hope you heard in there some of the tension of these women already knowing who they were and at the same time discovering who they were going to be. We'll continue to explore that tension in the next episode. Thanks for listening to Black Women of Amherst College. This series is a production of Amherst College, WC1 Studios, and Zell Division. I'm Nichelle Carr, executive producer and host. It was edited by Michael Osborne and produced by Jennifer Hsu and Trisha Nelson. Our engineers were Erica Huang and Evan Viola. Special thanks to all the women and other members of the Amherst College community who participated in and supported the project, including all of our storyteller interviewees, Tanae Adaro-Howard, President Biddy Martin, Mike Kelly, and the project steering committee, Rhonda Cobham-Sander, Martin Garner, Sandy Janelius, Cree Polk, Kate Salop, Bette Schumacher, Victoria Wilson, and Norm Jones. This series is dedicated to all of the Black women of Amherst College, past, present, and future.